That's Paul Schultz. I'm Steve Benson. This is the Don't Panic Radio Show. So sit back, relax, and ignore the news because nothing you're about to hear is true.
In the beginning, the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move.
Ignore the news after about 10 minutes. I'm setting a timer for 10 minutes. We got a political / current events update for y'all. And then you don't want that, you forward to the end, just like always. If you do want that, just keep listening because we're right in the thick of things.
Yeah, and if you listen all the way through, it helps our algorithm. So there's that.
There is that. Do you know what else helps our algorithm? Like, subscribe, hit the bell.
That's right. Yep. Look at you learning.
So we're right in the middle. We're sitting here toward the end of August. It's been a little chilly here lately. By chilly, I mean low 70s. It's supposed to be in the 90s again next week. That's just what August is like.
Hence the flannel.
But currently, the Democratic National Convention's going on, and it so far has been fire. I mean, they seem to be doing a pretty good job of bringing out the heavyweights, bringing out the stars. A couple nights ago, they had Jasmine Crockett on. You know, y'all know who Jasmine Crockett is, the congressional representative from the great state of Texas, the Houston area, who reminded us all that you can't necessarily say whatever you want in Congress unless your name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And Jasmine Crockett proved it by asking Mr. James Comer, would it be okay if I referred to somebody's bleached blonde bad built butch body? To which James Comer said, "Oh, what now?
What now?
Yep. What now?"
Yeah,
she really hits that H hard in the word what. What now?
Yeah, that's a pretty hard H you got there, buddy. Yeah, she knew what she was doing. She knew what she was doing. She knew how to play by the rules.
That is true. That is true. And I love I listen to this one podcaster. It's called Hood Politics, but his name's Propaganda. And he's great. I love his podcast, but he talks about Black culture, and he's like, look, y'all think that we only know how to talk one way. Of course we know how to talk to our people, right? We know how to talk to each other, but we also know in a professional setting how to talk. And he was talking about Jasmine Crockett, and he's like, and she normally, like, you see her in these congressional hearings and stuff, she's really smart. She's like intelligent and like knows what she's doing, and she knows how to speak in a professional setting. And her cultural background came out when she was talking. And he's like, and you heard AOC in the background too going, baby girl. She's just like, don't even play.
I was joking with it. Amy and I were joking about that, and we're like, that is not the first time she said that.
Somebody asked her, and she said she wasn't chambered, and was she waiting for an opportunity to use it? She's like, not necessarily, but she said alliteration is very important, and and she said that again at the DNC the other night. She's like, she said something with some V's in it. I don't remember. But then, of course, everything led up to Joe Biden's speech. And the entire time Joe Biden was talking, I kept going back and forth because I kept forgetting that he's not the nominee anymore. And every time he would pause a little bit too long, or he'd get that like faraway look in his eyes, I'd be like, oh no. And I'd be like, oh yeah, he's not the nominee anymore.
But you don't gotta sweat this so much.
Yeah. So it was a good speech, though. I mean, he's going out in the best possible way.
Yeah.
He's got this job for 5 more months or whatever it is, right? And he knows somebody else is going to be taking the job from him. So he's just like, I was talking to my dad last night. It was my dad's birthday. I was just chatting with my dad. I was like, how awesome would it be? You got Air Force One, you've got the chefs, you've got the mansion, you've got all the things, but you don't even have to worry for the next 5 months. You just kind of have to, maintain
Yeah.
for 5 months. Then you can
Yep.
retire.
Yep.
Short timer.
It's like you're quitting, so you're quitting. So just do
Yeah.
what you want to do.
One way or another. And if the other
Mm.
guy wins, you don't even have to be there to show him the ropes. Like if
Yep.
Kamala wins, he'll probably like stick around. He'll show her around the
Yeah.
place. Tell her where the coffee pot is, and introduce her around the place. Show her its files. Here's my files. You might not need them, and here's my number in case something comes up. I forget to tell you something. You can give me a call. You know how
Mhm.
when you hand off your job to somebody, if Kamala wins, that's how it'll go. If Trump wins, he'll probably be even happier. He'll be like, I ain't helping the next guy. Are you kidding? Good luck.
That's right. Here's where we keep the ketchup. Here's where we keep the Depends.
What he won't do is he won't take the. It's kind of funny because Biden may very well have some Depends around the place.
I was just gonna leave that one hanging there, man.
But one thing he won't do is take his files with him.
This is
We've
true.
learned, don't take the
Yeah.
files with you.
Yeah. One
But
thing he won't do is try to overthrow the government on his way out.
true. I can't even figure. I was talking to my dad, and my dad has when he watches the news, it's Fox News, but
Sure.
it doesn't like sink in. It's like playing in the background, but it kind of sinks in, but doesn't sink in. It's like where he gets his information, but he
Yeah.
doesn't really like. He's not a Trumper. He's not a MAGA dude. He's just ill-informed, I'll say, because
Yeah. Yeah.
he's talking about that. He's like, oh, I can't wait to see Trump debate Kamala, and I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, it should be pretty good. I was like, I can't even imagine. I said if I was her debating him, all I'd do is I'd get up there. I'd just be like, I'd start everything with, dude's been found to be a rapist, and he tried to overthrow the government, and he won't shut up about how unfair everything is. So whatever. I don't know even know what he just said, but here's my plan. You know,
Yeah.
I just I don't even know why we're having this conversation, guys. Because my dad was like, "Hey, maybe you should run for president someday," and I'm like, "I used to think I wouldn't be able to because I got some skeletons in my closet, right?" But now Trump has shown us the thing he's done
Mhm.
is he's shown everybody, even those of us who have less than perfect backgrounds, anybody can be president.
Bar is mighty low.
People will back a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist. They'll do it. A
Mhm.
guy who tried to overthrow the government. They'll vote for
Yep.
him. So. That was kind of Obama. Obama gave his speech last night, and that was kind of
Yeah.
his take. He's kind of like, do we really want 4 more years of this bumbling idiot?
Yeah. Yeah. I watched it. I watched his and Michelle's. I got home early enough to watch them.
Yeah. So, I know a lot of what I just said might rub some of you the wrong way, but if we can't have a conversation, another thing Obama pointed out, he's like, we all got to live with each other.
Hmm.
We're all like, what? Let's just be kind. Right? Let's be kind to each other. Once we get this guy out of the way, then we can be nice to each other. I can listen to your concerns, and I can be like, okay, what in your life was so bad, or had you so afraid that you were willing to vote for this rapist, felon guy? And let's have the conversation. Now, if you don't want to have the conversation, that's fine too. We won't have the conversation, but I'm open to it. That last statement was worth a few comments down below that'll say, no, you're
Yes.
just a liberal. You
Yeah.
won't listen. You're ignorant. You don't understand anything. That's worth a few of those comments, but
Yeah. I read them all. So if you really want
yeah.
to, trigger us, feel free to leave whatever triggering comment you think will trigger us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, newsflash, it won't. But
Right.
spoilers.
So we'll see, and we'll see probably by next week we'll probably know. But normally, typically, candidates get a bump from their convention.
Mhm.
Trump didn't really get one from the Republican convention because it was overshadowed by Biden dropping out and
Yep.
Harris stepping in. Harris
Yep.
had momentum going into the convention. They'll probably get the bump because nothing Trump is trying is really breaking into the news cycle. That's what he's trying to break into the news cycle, but it's not really working because the DNC was so well planned. And I predicted riots. I thought the cops would unleash on the protesters. I was wrong so far. We'll see.
Yeah.
There's two more days.
There was a little bit of bad actors or bad faith actors going on, but that was it.
Yeah, you'll have that big operation like this. Some stuff will go on, but even Biden said, "Hey, the protesters have a point," which is which he's right. It's like they get to make their voices heard, right?
Yep.
So the only thing that from here, I think, unless there are large scale police riots starting today, tomorrow, this DNC is looking like pretty successful. Famous last word. Smash cut to a week from now. I'm like, oh no. But
yeah.
That's our 10 minutes. Thank you. Welcome back. Today we have a very special treat for me. It's a treat for me, maybe a treat for Paul as well.
I'm thinking it's a treat for me because I have no idea what it is. So
it's called Soft Core History.
That's right.
Yeah. Today we're going to talk about Ernest Shackleton and the Endurance. And it's a really interesting story. It's something I like. The other day, out of the blue, you asked me, like, what was the name of that island that Shackleton? I was like, oh, South Georgia Island is the one where they eventually got to, where the whaling station was. Maybe are you asking about Elephant Island, which is the one that they basically had to walk to? But then they left there and went to South Georgia Island. Like, that was all off the top of my head. And I was like, holy crap, I know a fair bit about that expedition because it's just, I love it. It just fascinates me. So,
yeah. Well, I was having a conversation with Amy because she was looking at islands down there. I don't know, to buy maybe. And it just triggered. I'm like, oh yeah, what was the so I'm giving her as much of the Shackleton expedition as I can remember, but I can't remember what the hell the name of the island was. They basically, fell over onto. So that's what I messaged you, and then she's looking, and I'm just watching a little, as you're texting, and then these big rolling texts pop up.
I hope she buys Elephant Island. That would be cool. It's cold. It gets cold there, but.
I imagine so.
All right, let's set this up.
All right.
Think about the last time you were out in some extreme cold. I know we're sitting here in the middle of summer, but you might be listening to this in wintertime. And I'm talking cold, like with the wind, it just hurts your face. You're like, ow, the wind's trying to kill me.
Yeah.
It's dark. The wind is howling and you're walking like longer than you expected. You're like trying to get to your car or you're trying to get to, to your house or whatever, but your face is hurting, your fingertips are aching, your toes are frozen, but you have to kind of keep going, right? Because just ahead, your car's there, your house is there. You could, you got that little yellow glow coming from your house, and the furnace is on, and the smoke's coming out of the chimney, and you're like, man, this hurts. Think about the last time, right? How cold was it? Was it like 20, 10? Was it below zero? Was the wind chill below zero? Now imagine you're in that same bone chilling, you're outside your house, or you're trying to get to your car or whatever, and it's burning your skin, but this time your car's not there. Your house isn't there. And there is no light. It's dark. It's like country dark, right? It's not 20, it's not 10, it's minus 20. And I don't mean wind chill. It is flat out minus 20 degrees. The wind chill is like 50 or 60 below zero. There's no car, there's no warm house, and there's nothing, no shelter, not even civilization for like hundreds or thousands of miles. You're just in the middle of absolute nowhere. I've heard of absolute zero. This is absolute nowhere. So this might give you a small fraction of what it might have been like in the early 20th century, if you're the explorer Ernest Shackleton and his crew. When their ship became stuck in the Antarctic ice sheet in the middle of winter in 1915. So this is the story of Shackleton and the Endurance expedition of 1914 to 1916. Ernest Shackleton, born February 15th, 1874, and he was an ambitious man. His accomplishments never seemed to live up to his desire for quick wealth and security. By 1914,
like Ralph and Ed Norton. Yeah.
He's right. He was the Ralph and Ed Norton. That's right. He wanted to get rich and he wanted to be safe, and he was a very ambitious man. But things never seemed to live up to his ambition. By 1914, this was the age of like exploration, like heroic Arctic exploration. Like everybody was trying to get Scott, Amundsen, Cook, all these guys were trying to get to the North Pole or the South Pole, and they had all, like by 1914, they had made these things had been reached, right? Except one thing: a transcontinental trek across the South Pole. So nobody had gone from one end of the South Pole, one end of Antarctica to the other across the South Pole. The Endurance also never reached that goal. They tried. They set out and tried it. But they never really even made it to land. It on its way to, he had gathered his crew, he gathered up provisions, he grabbed the Endurance, which was a wooden ship, and they set out to go to Antarctica and got trapped in the ice on the way there. Particularly tough winter in the Antarctic ice sheet. But once they got trapped, it was like, well, this isn't unusual to get trapped. We can, probably wait this out. The ice shifts, and we'll get open water. If we can get some open water, these things are designed that they can kind of ram into the ice and sort of break it up, and we can get free of it, right? So while this was going on, they're kind of comfortable considering the circumstances. It's a long, dark,
what you're getting into.
Cold winter of 1915, and it's dark because it's at one of the poles. Winter of 1915, interestingly, was probably summer at the North Pole, right? They were probably wishing they were at the North Pole at that point. But they hung out in the ship and kept
10
busy.
degrees.
They chilled out literally chilled for 8 months, like that. So then the spring starts to come, right? And when the spring comes, things start to warm up, and the ice on the edges toward north starts to melt. The ice starts to break up a little bit, and these giant sheets of ice start to shift. And the ice sort of starts to crush their ship, and Shackleton sees this, and he's like, the ship isn't going to last much longer, and he's like, everybody off the ship. So they give the order to abandon ship, and they're like, okay, now what do we do, boss? They've got their lifeboats, but as far as they can see.
You're such a smart ass. What do we do now?
What do we do now, boss? So they got in their lifeboats and started pulling the lifeboats across the ice. And they just made out. By the way, remember, no GPS, no, maps really to speak of. They had maps, but they're only as good as the few people that had come this way before.
Yeah.
And they had left some provisions and some stores on an island 12 years earlier, that they knew they had left some provisions there in case anybody ever got stranded. That's the kind of thing they used to do back in the day. They would set up a thing and put whatever passes for provisions. I don't know,
not milk. I don't think like milk.
Like the ultimate, no milk, no eggs, like the ultimate preppers, right? 12 years later, I might need this. So they knew where this island was, and they just took out after it, and they were able to, with their sextant and their compass and everything, they were able to figure out like what direction to go, and the ice is moving around and flowing, so they kind of were able to ride the ice a little bit and just hope that the ice stayed frozen long enough for them to make it to this island. Well, that was Elephant Island, and they make it. So it's like, like walking across the surface of the moon. They're dragging these lifeboats, enough supplies for 28 men and 28 men. And then 3 days after they're yanking and pulling these boats, they had walked about 2 miles. So they're like, oh, crap. So they hunker down, and they're waiting for the ice to break up. Eventually, they had to kill and eat their dogs. It was horrible. And then
I'm sorry, but you're delicious.
Yeah. So they were going to walk to Elephant Island, but they were like, this is just not going to work. 3 days, 2 miles, we'll never get there. It's hundreds of miles away. But eventually, the ice started to break up enough that there was open water, and they were able to get in their boats and go the 300 miles to Elephant Island in about 7 days in gale force winds. So they get to this Elephant Island. There's nothing, no vegetation, no anything. Like obviously no. There's some seals and things that they can kind of eat, to keep them sustained, and there's some fresh water. But and one dude like had a heart attack, but he didn't die. Right? Still, nobody's died this whole time. They make it all the way to this Elephant Island. Nobody dies. Right?
I'm thinking more than one person had a heart attack, but that was the one they noticed.
It's like they're all having heart attacks. Oh, this is the big one.
Just keep pulling. Lock them off.
Shackleton almost immediately is like, well, we can't stay here. It's like, we don't have to go home, but we can't stay here, right? This is not going to last. Nobody's going to come rescue us here. Nobody knows we're here. There's no radios. There's no nothing. And oh, by the way, they left in 1914. There's a little something else kicking off about 1914 that everybody else was focused on, called World War I, and nobody's going to spare resources to send down to try to rescue 28 dudes that are probably dead anyway, because nobody's heard from them, right? So he's like, we got to get somewhere where there's somebody. And the closest place would have been South America, and some islands off of South America, but that was in the opposite direction of the sea, the way the sea flows down there. So down there, between South America and Antarctica, just there's nothing but ocean, and there's nothing stopping it from, you got the spin of the earth, and you got the prevailing winds, just the currents, and the waves are like 50-foot waves and huge winds, all blowing east. So there was no way they were going to be able to head straight up and get to the closest spot, which would have been South America. So they're like, so we'll head for this island in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, which is like trying to, throw a softball 300 yards and hit a Frisbee. Right? It's like in a boat with like a sail and some oars and a sextant that is the only way to see what direction you're going, right? But they knew there was an island there, and they knew it was a whaling station. It was called South Georgia Island. So he's like, all right, 5 of you are coming with me, and we're headed for South Georgia Island. It's 800 miles away, and the only way we know what direction we're going is this thing that needs a level surface, and you need a few minutes of being able to see the horizon. It's like, boss, with the 50-foot waves and everything, how's this going to work? He's like, I don't know, but it's really our only choice. So
yeah,
let's go.
What else? You got any other ideas?
Yeah.
I'm open.
Right. So 16 days, and like, dude would they'd get to the top of a wave, and he'd be like, oh, I can see the horizon. He would take his little reading with the sextant, and he'd be like, I think we're about right here. And I think we got to go that direction. And 16 days with these dudes. And they made it. He was only able to get a sextant reading like one time. Like every time they'd come to the top of the thing, he would try to get a reading, and like, well, shoot, it didn't work that time. Okay, wait till next time. And he tried in 16 days. He was only able to get one reading, and they were able to course correct enough that they made it to this South Georgia island. You know, phew, woo, we made it, right?
How many times do you think the F-bomb got dropped?
All of them, all the F-bombs
I mean-
got dropped. So they had trouble getting to the island because I don't know if you've ever been to one of these like seashore areas where it's not like a nice beach with some breakwaters and stuff. It's like the full
Mhm.
force of the ocean's hitting it. It's like the waves are slamming against the rocks and like there's little
Yeah.
inlets that are and these huge waves. That's kind of what they were up against, trying to get to this island without the waves smashing them up against the rocks, right?
Yeah,
But
you
they were
can't
able
quite
to do
that.
it with their skill and a little bit of luck. They were able to get there, and they're like, you know, to laying on the beach or whatever they're laying on the rocks and stuff. Like, oh my God, we're saved, right? And somebody goes, okay, where the hell are we? And they're like,
We're not in the water. That's where we are.
hey boss, we're out of the water. We're on the wrong side of the island. He's like, we're on the what? He's like, yeah, we're on the wrong side of the island. He's like, well, we can't get back in the boat and go around. If we try to get back in the boat, it's going to be like when Tom Hanks in Castaway was trying to ride that porta potty out, you know, into the ocean. You're just going to keep getting slammed back up into we
Yep.
can't. So that won't work. We can't sail around. We're going to have to walk. It's like, no problem, boss. We can just walk around. No, we can't walk around because it's just steep cliffs. Well, if you can't go around it, can't go under it. Guess we got to go over it. Which doesn't sound so
mountain
bad.
climber.
It
Put
doesn't
mountain
sound-
climber on your resume.
You put mountain climber on your. It doesn't sound so bad until you find out that it's a mountain. It's not like just. It's not like Gilligan's Island is just a flat island, right? It's a mountain. It's probably a volcanic. I could look this up. It's probably a volcanic island, right? Which means it's just straight up and straight back down. So they had to do 32 miles of steep mountains. By the way, in 1916, which was by the time they got there, it's like 1916. Nobody had ever done it because nobody ever looked at that mountain and thought, that's a thing I want to cross. And nobody did it again until 1955, right? So it was like 40 years before anybody was ever like, oh, I think I'll try that thing Shackleton did. So a couple of them crossed over this mountain and so they get to the top and they're like, okay, now how do we get it? Because they can see the whaling station like 1,000 feet below. And they're like, okay, but how do we get there? It's because we can't really climb down. We'll slip and fall, right? So they make a sled out of their rope, and they sled down 1,000 feet down to this whaling station and go stumbling into the thing. It's like, is this England? No. So some dude is just like at the whaling station doing, you know, whaling stuff, whatever you do in the whaling station, you know, probably harvesting blubber or something. He looks up, dudes are stumbling out of the, looks like, this is 1916, so it's like this, like they stumbled right out of the 19th century. I don't know, probably big bushy beards and like dirty.
Yeah, I'm sure shaving was not a priority at that point.
Right. It would have been funny if they came out and the dude just shot him. It's like they
Like
made
they
it
were, like,
all
skinny-
this way.
Some kind of skinny wolf or something running across the.
Yeah. So they chartered a boat, went back and got their buddies back on Elephant Island, who were probably super shocked to see these guys. They were probably like, all right, have fun sailing to Georgia Island. We'll never see you again. We're going to die here. But no, they show back up. They save them. So after spending the winter on the ice, after a frigid lifeboat ride to Elephant Island, after a harrowing 16-day journey through 50-foot waves and gale force storms, after climbing over steep mountains, all 28 men survived, not one death amongst the human people. They had left
16
England and
days, somebody won a big lottery because you know there was bets. They
Yeah,
ain't coming
right.
back.
Nowadays there would be when they'd be talking about it. So they'd left England in August of 1914, and they made it back to civilization in August of 1916. One of the dudes was like, "Who won the war?"
Yeah.
And anybody who knows anything about World War One, August of 1916 was,
Yeah.
you know, the war was really getting going, right?
Yep. Yep. I think out of those 28 guys, like probably from then on, all of them took their whiskey neat. So I'm done. I'm done with cold water and
That's
ice.
right. Yeah, I want to.
Like I
So
said the other day, of course, my thing is you survive all that just to get drafted and die in the war.
So Shackleton made it to 1922, age 47,
Mhm.
died of a heart attack,
Mm.
of all places on South Georgia Island,
I
while
mean, you'd
preparing
think you would
for
have
a
stayed away.
final Antarctic mission. He was getting ready to go back. And he was buried there on South Georgia Island at the request of his wife. And I'm sure he would have wanted that too. He probably would have been like, no, bury me at the South Pole. I got to make it there at least once.
Bury me somewhere on the equator where it's warm.
He accomplished little in life that he set out to, and
Mhm.
he left nothing but crushing debt to his wife. That's probably why she was like, leave him on whatever, wherever he died, just bury him there, whatever costs, whatever's the cheapest.
Yeah, burial plots are probably cheap on South Georgia Island.
So crushing debt, accomplished little he set out to, but toward the end of the last century of the 20th century, his heroism was rediscovered. Because think of it, who would you rather be? All right, look at it this way. Royal Navy Captain Robert Scott, who was during this age of Arctic exploration. He, on one of his expeditions, discovered the Antarctic Plateau, which is where the South Pole is. He found the first fossils discovered in Antarctica. Great contributions to science. And he made it to the South Pole. He wasn't the first, but he was like maybe the second to make it to the South Pole. But then he and his men died on the return trip. Right? They didn't make it back. Roald Amundsen led an expedition that he was the first. His expedition was the first. He beat Scott by about 5 weeks. And so, efficient, fast. So one of their contemporaries, who was also one of the early explorers, Sir Raymond Priestley, said it best, I think. And this is really when you're thinking about Shackleton, and it just makes me so happy that we've rediscovered this hero. He said, you want Scott for scientific method. You would want Amundsen for speed and efficiency. But if disaster strikes and all hope is gone, get down on your knees and pray for Shackleton. So who would you rather go with? I'll take Shackleton every time.
He was not somebody I'd want to get in an argument with because he'd end up winning eventually, regardless.
That's right. That's right. He was the Joe Biden of Antarctic explorers. So that's what a story. What a story. If y'all want to really get into it, there's a book called Endurance, and you got to buy a copy. This is, I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I'm a fan of the Kindle, but you have to get yourself a copy of Endurance, because it's got, one of the things Shackleton did was he insisted that they bring this dude's camera, and that they save all of the pictures this dude took. He was using one of those giant, like you see in the old TV shows where you pull the hood over your head and it's got the big plate thing.
Yep.
He was using that. So it wasn't as simple as like, make sure you hang on to your film so we can take it to the Walgreens when we get home.
Yeah. Don't drop your phone in the water when we're out here.
Exactly. It was this giant, thing. And he insisted that they save all of his photos, and they've got these prints in the book, and they're fantastic. The high resolution, just the eeriness of it, the lighting.
Yeah.
You can see the ship before it breaks up. You can just see all of these different stages of the expedition. It's awesome. So I have a little epilogue too. You mentioned that, you go through all this trouble to get drafted into World War I. So they made it back, and I was looking for who died in World War I, right? Once they made it back, and I couldn't find the only one I could find was Alfred Cheatham, who, when he came back, he became when he made it back. So he was like one of the officers on the expedition. And when they made it back, he joined the Royal Navy. And his ship, while he was out doing something, was torpedoed. And he went down with his ship and died. And that was the only one I could find. But to your point, to make it through all that, just to get torpedoed during World War I, it's like, that is no way to go. Shipping wasn't even that huge a deal. Like they did try some blockades and stuff, but there weren't very many naval battles during World War I. So to be one of the few that gets torpedoed and dies, it's a shame.
Yeah, it's just one more feather in your hat. Imagine though, like you're one of, you get drafted, but you're one of those guys down in the trenches, and like people around you are just moaning and groaning. Oh, it's so cold in here. It's so drafty. That's gross. Oh, and you're just like, first time, 'cause you're just sitting there, like,
There's another. This is what I'd like to call the epilogue / Wikipedia rabbit hole, because as I was looking I was looking through the list of crew members, I found one that is particularly heartbreaking, and that is Mrs. Chippy. And Mrs. Kippy was this dude's cat. This dude was like a cook or something, and Mrs. Kippy was a male cat, which they figured out about a month after the expedition left. But they had already named him Mrs. Chippy because he followed this guy around and was super loyal to this guy. I just love the look on his face. It's just like,
yeah.
And they said they were amazed. Everybody loved the cat, had lots of personality. And during like when the ship's just rocking from waves and stuff, the cat's able to like walk across these 1-inch railings without falling off and everything.
Oh yeah, it's crazy what they can do.
Everybody loved this cat. And when they had to abandon ship, Shackleton had to make some hard decisions. And one of the hard decisions he made was any dogs that couldn't pull anything because they're either lame or weak or whatever, he had them shot, and he had Mrs. Chippy shot because he was just like, we can't afford the provisions.
Yeah.
We just can't do it. Now, that's a hard decision to have to make. I sympathize with Shackleton. I might have made a different decision just because I'd have been like, well, morale is important too. But you can't argue with a guy that got all 28 humans back.
Yeah. I mean, R.I.P. Mrs. Kippy, but
Yeah. And Mrs. Kippy, by the way, gone but not forgotten. Because this dude, when he finally died, Mrs. Kippy, they made a bronze statue of Mrs. Kippy and put him on this dude's grave.
That's crazy.
And so this is a picture of Mrs. Kippy at the Karori Cemetery where Mrs. Kippy's companion is buried. So gone, not forgotten.
Yeah, bronze Mrs. Kippy ain't having it. She's just not. He's not impressed.
He'll be missed.
Yeah.
So there you go, Shackleton. Thank you for listening to my Shackleton story.
What a tie.
Or Mrs. Kippy. And especially for Paul Schultz. I'm Steve Vinson. This has been the Don't Panic Radio Show, and nothing you just heard was true.